without further ado,
Oh, thank you,
the
Czar.
best person I know on circles. Go ahead.
That's what you say in a day. Wait
Right.
till
That's
next
the day.
week.
That's the day. We're
Just
living
so,
in the moment.
yeah, exactly. So last week we had actually started off, or not last week, it's 2 weeks ago, we talked about what marriage burnout is, or in this one, relationship burnout. And we kind of left off talking about expectations versus settling.
Hmm.
And so we're going, um, let me just kind of go back a little bit for some that weren't here a couple weeks ago. So one of the things that I said from the last time is marriage burnout occurs when you do not feel appreciated and you're not getting enough affection or attention that you need, and that results in conflict and bitterness. So like the feelings and excitement and love that you felt when you first started gets replaced by those feelings. So it is actually kind of common that it happens, but it's what you do with it that makes a difference. And it has been, so that is a little bit about what marriage burnout, or in this case relationship burnout, whatever you want to call it, is. So to pick up from where we were last time, we were talking about what expectation is versus settling. And I would like to know, what do you think expectations are?
Mm. Mm. All right. Don't everybody ask at once. 'Cause I don't know what y'all
Mm-hmm.
expect. I don't know what we're expecting, but ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. Go ahead, Ange.
Just repeat the question one more time.
What do you think expectations are? What are expectations versus what is settling?
Okay, so expectations are more like helping around the house, helping with the kids. Being subtle is just kind of like, being like, hey, how is your day, or other things like that. But I think expectations is a partnership where you should be able to know what each other needs to have a good marriage. Maybe? Yeah.
You're heading there. Hmm.
That's all I got. So it's someone else's turn.
Fair, fair. And I see Beth Ann. Would you like to share next?
Okay, for me, it's about reciprocity and the person doing their own inner healing work, because it's important to be on the same page and to be able to have your non-negotiables. Because, like, for instance, and I heard Czar say this too, and I'm on this page as well, is like, I don't like yelling in a relationship when there's problems. That can burn you out, and that can make you feel real depleted. And it can also make you feel like, you know what I mean? You are, um, sometimes it just goes real negative. You just feel like sometimes giving up if there's too much of that, if there's too much contention. So yeah, that's all I got right now. Being equally yoked is really important.
Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Beth Ann and Jason.
Yeah, I think expectations can actually be a bit of a negative because we are expecting our significant other to do certain things when in a lot of cases we in order to find our peace we just have to step in and just do it. And it's like the opposite of enslavement. It's like we're not asking you to do something, just the difference between having to do something and getting to do something. So sometimes expectations can bring us down. So we just have to take it upon ourselves and have the initiative and knowing. And that's, I guess, that's where the burnout comes in. Like me right now, picking up these Legos because I'm the only one that actually does it and not feeling bitter about it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Exactly. Thank you all for sharing all of that. And I want to recognize, kind of share what we want to have realistic standards for our relationships. So, even if you think about it, we want to be realistic about what our expectations are. So we want to expect to be treated well with the understanding that all issues can be solved. That is something realistic that we can expect.
Mm.
But expectations that are unrealistic is you will become what I want you to be.
Ooh. Mm.
So we don't want to have that thoughts. Like we want to change somebody to fit what we want. And I think that becomes where it's unrealistic. And then we don't want to settle. And not settling means it's okay that we are different. We just may not be compatible.
Mm.
Sometimes we want people to fit in our box, and it's just not possible. So we have to sometimes meet that person where they're at, even though it's not comfortable and that's not what we want. We have to be able to say, you know what, either we are compatible where we both have an understanding and we're moving towards in the same direction, or we're not. And we have to be okay with whichever one it is. And that's hard because when we invest into that relationship, we want to be on the same page. And in our minds, sometimes we try to make someone fit our mold, and it's just not possible. I see Jason. Jason, your hand's still up? Or is it up from last time?
Oh, it's still up from last time. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I'm just making sure you didn't have anything. Caitlin?
Yeah, I wish I would have like joined this room a lot sooner. Like I seen it before, but then I always think like to myself, oh, that's not for me because I'm not married. I'm just like in a relationship, common law, whatever you want to call it. And I have kids, so like it's not for me. So I thought it was specifically on marriage, but anyways, I could have learned a lot sooner if I knew it was like not just about marriage. It could be just like any type of relationship. So
Look, yes, and it can. Even when you're saying common law married, that's still married. It's just a long-term relationship.
Okay, so technically it is still married if it's common law. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and you have to understand too, the word marriage means merge, right? So who are you trying to merge your life with? Who are you trying to do this life with? And so in that sense, that's why she says too that it can be long-term relationship. You're dating or you're even thinking about it. And like I said, the principles that she's laying out today for us and in the next couple of weeks for us, I think that they can unfold into just how we do relationship with those that we merge with, period. So
Okay. Well, in that case, I'll definitely be joining in this room a lot more, listening
yeah,
in.
yep. And get your notepad ready, so that you're ready. It's like don't think you're too late. You would have joined it sooner, but you joined it now. You're here now.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing. So one of the things that we want to also talk about is emotional imbalance. Emotional imbalance is one major factor that plays a part in some marriage burnout. And some of those is that even when we were just talking about expectation, a failed expectation that your relationship will give you a more profound meaning to your life. So in our minds, when we do, as Zara says, when we merge with somebody else or we want to merge with somebody else, we want them to have a positive impact on our lives. And we're expecting them to give or pour into us, or pour into our relationship, or pour into each other, and you pour into them. And sometimes that doesn't happen.
I know that's right.
And as you're pouring in, and they're taking and they're taking and they're taking and they're not returning, that's that emotional imbalance. And that's where it actually comes where there is that emotion, that burnout. You start feeling burnt out because you're sick and tired of always being the one to be the one to pour into somebody else, and they're not giving anything in return.
Mm.
And we want, and of course, it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be that you're going to always be the one to, or you're always going to be the one to pour into them, but there always has to be a give and take. Sometimes you may be giving 90 and they're giving 10%, but then other times you may be giving 10% and they're giving 90. It's that time when you don't have the energy and they're not giving you anything, and they're still expecting more. Czar.
Mm. Yeah. So do you think that in that instance, and I may have asked this last time, that like you're saying, there's that give and take. Sometimes you're giving 90 and they're giving 10. Do you think that we sometimes confuse that with, oh, we're just not compatible?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
Definitely, because sometimes, especially if it lasts for a long period of time. And let me give you an example of how that could happen. And this is going to be, I would say, this is going to be more of like that extreme, like in a grief situation. So, say,
Mm.
for example, your partner, family member, somebody they're really close with passes away. They don't have the emotional capacity to give you at that time. So you're the one that's pouring into them a lot, and they're not giving anything back. That would be normal. But when it lasts for an extensive amount of time, and they never kind of shake that emotion, whether it be a year or 2 years from now, that's when the emotional imbalance starts happening and you start getting burnt out, because you're like, I'm also here. I'm here. And you're not giving anything back to me. Or even
Mm.
if the case, or in the case would be, you have it and they're not able, or they've lost somebody and then you've lost somebody, and neither one of you are capable of giving anything back.
Mm. Mm. Hmm.
And then you're just there. You're just in a point, you're in a place where you just don't, you're just getting burnt out.
Hmm.
And that's when you're like, I can't do this anymore.
I've
And
seen
then
that be a space. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, that's when you spell, you are over it.
OVER. And it is, I've seen a lot of relationships end in that phase during grief. Like when both parties are just sort of, I've actually seen it where they've ended and then later they realize that they wish they hadn't ended it because they realized they were both just grieving and they both just didn't have the energy to tend to each other
Mm-hmm.
tend to each other in the way that they needed to in that space. So I guess we need wisdom to really recognize where we are and, maybe even where the other person is when that imbalance seems to be there sometimes.
Exactly. So, and is being aware of when it's an imbalance because of other issues, or an imbalance because somebody's being selfish.
Mm. Hmm.
So, but it's that pouring into somebody else constantly without getting anything in return that causes the burnout. Another thing is that causes some emotional imbalance is unclear boundaries. And that's like the lack of personal space or time for self-care. So when we are together, and I've heard this many, many times, it's when that person and you and that person are stuck to the hip. You are doing
Mm.
everything together. You want to spend every waking moment together. You're pouring a lot into that relationship, but when are you pouring into yourself?
Mm.
Are we becoming codependent, or are we interdependent? And that codependency is when there's that emotional imbalance as well. And when we get to that point, that's when it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy to be codependent. It's healthy to, yes, pour into your relationship, but also have that time where you can also pour into yourself.
Hmm.
There's a nice balance And
Hmm.
trying to figure out that balance is hard. Trying to figure out when is it okay to take a step away and have my own and us do things together.
Hmm.
Caitlin, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, so just to be clear, can you remind us what codependent means?
Absolutely. I can definitely explain that a little bit more. So give you an example in there. A lot of times in codependency, it's going to be like, the best analogy I can give you is a relationship addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And what that really means is that you or that person, it's a one-sided, emotionally destructive, and can be abusive. So you can't do anything without that other person.
Oh, okay.
And your attention, the focus, is always on that one. So you sacrifice your own for somebody else.
Okay.
And sometimes it happens both ways.
Yeah.
And and
Okay.
it's also, does that make sense?
Yeah, it really makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then there's interdependence. So interdependence is where there's health. It's healthy. So you are depending on each other with the idea that you all are independent, but you are dependent. You're together, but you're separate. So being able to do things on your own, like having your own hobbies, like having your own time. Like it's okay to go hang out with my friend. It's okay to, go to a dance class without you. It's okay for you to go golfing without me because I don't have to be with you every waking moment. So those unclear boundaries where you don't have those personal space and your time for self-care can lead to you feeling like you're giving constantly, which leads to that emotional burnout again.
But I love him and I love her.
Yeah, but do you love you?
Oh. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew somebody was thinking that. I just.
Yes, but do you love you
Mm,
more than you love them?
mm,
Just a thought. Another
yeah.
one of emotional imbalance is those repeated cycles of fighting and misunderstanding and tension. Oh my gosh, that's
Mm,
exhausting. Just always
mhm,
fighting, always, and then always anything you say turns into an argument. Not being able to communicate, or even the idea is that you can't even bring up anything that happened and it be addressed in a healthy way,
mm,
or even addressed at all. Because I've also heard it where like, well, you're being stupid, so why we even talk about that? That's not important. Let's not talk about that. That sweeping
mm,
it constantly underneath the rug. Well, dirt can only go so far. If it's under the rug, it turns into this big old heap that you're eventually going to fall over.
mhm,
And all of
mhm,
those issues are now spilled out around the house. And you're trying to clean it up, but you can't clean it up because those unresolved issues are still there and it's continuously there. It's just ignored, and that's not healthy.
mm. So you're saying we
And
actually have to deal.
yeah, let's deal.
To actually deal with things because I see that a lot, like with the relationships where I'm just not gonna deal with it, or I'm just not gonna talk about it, and then later, again, because it's a constant fight, or it's we're always talking about this particular thing, so I'm just not gonna deal with it anymore. Um, and it seems to be the thing that we think we're keeping the peace, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, that's not. It doesn't seem like that. Because I've said a lot of times before, there's a difference between making peace versus keeping peace, and I don't think we're called to keep the peace. because then that keeps us from speaking up for ourselves and actually really trying to have understanding and dealing with the things that are actually needing to be dealt with. Whereas making peace means giving the conditions so that we can not have to sweep things under the rug and actually deal with what we need to do.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And when you don't deal with it, it always comes up. And if you've ever heard the term fight fair, you can't fight fair because you still have all of this anger that has not been resolved from 10 years ago.
Well, look, I grew up in the hood. We didn't believe in no fight fair. No, I'm just playing. Go ahead. Sorry.
You know what?
Sorry, I had to.
Zara, take that back. Go back.
I'm on mute. Rewind. Mute.
Okay, well, we're going to pretend we didn't hear that. We're going to just talk to Jason.
Save him, Jason.
Okay, thank you. So what if you're at a point where you know that your spouse, clearly narcissistic, just wants to cause chaos and doesn't even want to come to any type of compromise with you? Because that's where I am at this point. At one point, she was texting with me and asking if I wanted to talk about a specific issue, and she was CCing our marriage counselor on it. I replied back, and then my last statement was, "I don't negotiate with bullies."
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know it sounds harsh, but for me, I have actually gotten to a point, and she even asked me today, I thought we were going to discuss this. I said, I never said I was going to discuss it. I don't want to discuss something with somebody that shows indifference. So what if you're at that point? Because it feels like to me, I've done all I can. That person has to want to change, but they're clearly not wanting to see what they are doing, and that they are just trying to, like that Michael Jackson song, want to be starting something.
That's a good song.
That is a good song.
To be honest with you, you're only in control of yourself. You cannot control what somebody else does. And if you are at a point where you're just don't want to address any of the issues at this time, then that would be when you are doing stuff with your marriage counselor, and you can have that conversation with a third party. And if it's not working, then you have to make a decision on what you want to do in your relationship.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. No problem. Michelle?
Hi.
Hi.
Jason, is it?
Yes,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How about you?
I'm good. How long have you been married?
Going on 16 years, I
Oh,
believe.
wow.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
And a lot of,
How long has this been going on? I'm just curious because our 6 years is coming up. And so what, 16 years is so long to spend with somebody. How can you I'm just curious from other people, other married couples, how do you just all of a sudden start having so many issues with someone that you've been with for so many years?
I'm sorry,
I was
real
just
quickly.
gonna say at that point, it's just like they've become family. I mean, like, I just want to understand, like, other people's
Perspective on that, or
Yeah.
situations with that. Mm-hmm.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
for me, I had to unpeel a lot of layers. You know, my wife was taking medication for bipolar, and I think the issues started shortly after she went off of her medication. She has not been medicated for anything since. She claims that she's not bipolar, but there's something there. And just understanding that at some point I realized that there was trust and control seemed to be one and the same with her. It's like she couldn't trust me without controlling me. She wanted to take care of the finances in the house, but she wanted to do it on her own. So there is certain control issues that are there, and it's seeping into other aspects of our relationship, as well as our family. Our two adult children want nothing to do with her, and I'm also in the throes of parental alienation with our 6-year-old. She went off medication so that she could get pregnant. And one thing that worried me was, what if her bipolar passed down onto her? But to make a long story short, I unpeeled all of this and started to look back and realize she was like Burger King. She had to have it her way. And when she didn't get it her way, that's when she started to complain. So I've unraveled that. And so I just turned 50 this year, and at this point, I realized I just want my peace, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have my peace.
Well,
But
that
if I,
has to be so hard that you guys are like that age and you're having to raise 6-year-olds.
Mhm.
Yeah.
but our,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
hard. But you know what? I think about what Ray Freeman said. He's a psychotherapist, and he says, young children will eventually have older eyes and look back and realize who the problem parent was.
Mm.
Well, you
And I,
never want to blame anybody because it's important for kids to like look up to both parents. So you don't want to negative talk or try to make them feel like they need to take sides. I grew up and my grandmother was like that. She and my grandfather didn't have a very good relationship in the end, and she always wanted to like reel us in to being on her side. And that really puts a kid in a very difficult position. So I would
Yeah.
definitely like try to keep your problems away from your youngsters because they feel it too. And like my heart just goes out to you who's having this many problems with a long-term marriage that has been successful for so long, you know?
Well, sometimes, like we said, like Dr. Tracy's saying, we end up in these cycles, right? And these cycles can go for so long, then depending on how we hold relationships, how we hold the marriage, if there's children involved, and sometimes we will ignore, um, or just get caught in, because just face it, like we're human. Things sometimes don't go the way that we expected them to go, and sometimes we're in something longer than. But this is how we get to burnout, like she's saying. We end up in these burnout phases, and sometimes don't even realize that we're burned out. But those cycles that she's just been talking about kind of becomes a huge, 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 huge piece in it. I see Spirit's hand. Um,
Hey, Zar, I appreciate this masterclass that is interactive. I've been in a few and we don't get to chime in until the last 2 or 3 minutes, and I didn't know that this was a setup for a masterclass like this. So I appreciate this uh, setup.
mhm.
Um, when somebody mentioned, I think it was Michelle, how does it happen all of a sudden?
Yeah.
And for me, it didn't happen all of a sudden. I don't even know what that is. It was gradual over time, which caused the burnout because it did not happen all of a sudden, or it wouldn't have been burnout because it was abrupt. This was over time, which caused the burnout, which is when I knew I couldn't do it anymore. Like, even if I had it in me, I couldn't give it. So it was
Mm,
over time, very slow. And that's how people get to be 15, 20, 30 years in. And then, like, oh my God.
mhm,
So that's
mhm.
that's that's the burnout part. Because and then all those things play a factor. When you have kids, starting all over, the fear of the unknown, what that looks like, and that's been your whole life. So it definitely is not all of a sudden.
Yeah. Dr. Tracy, have you seen it happen that way? Like where
I
we don't even realize it, the
Uh,
cycle?
don't even think the
yes,
pandemic made it.
yes. Actually, you're right. It doesn't happen all of a sudden. It does typically occur very slow, very gradually, and it happens on a more one of those, like, it's a sneak attack. It's like a ninja.
Ah, mhm,
It's
mhm,
yeah, and then all of a sudden you're looking back, and thank you, Spirit, for that, because you're right. It you look back in your life and you don't have the energy. And like I had shared 2 weeks ago, it is like going to school. And one of the things I said about going to school is, remember the idea for the ones who were here, that you've been conditioned to where something ends. Well, when we're in school, you know, at and I or actually, let's go this way, because some people really love school and they don't want it to end, and then you've got other people who are at the end of at the last month. Let's say whenever your last month is at the end of school, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do another test. I don't want to do another exam. I don't want to do anything more. And that is where the burnout is. Because at that time, we just need that break from there. And we weren't burnt out at the beginning of this the semester. We weren't burned out even at Christmas break. We don't get burned out until right around spring break. And even at spring
Mm,
break, there's that happy time that oh my gosh, this is wonderful. It's we love this. And then we come back and we're like, I'm tired. So
mm,
just like school, it's a gradual, and that is the easiest way to explain how marriage burnout is, but it's not even in that 1 year time. It's a gradual occurrence. It is those cycles of repeated fighting. There are those times where there's unclear boundaries, and there's those other times where there's that failed expectation. But then even this part, where there are times where we've got work or family related stress, and you feel a lack of support from your partner,
mm,
where you're like, oh, I'm just stressed out, and you want to be able to talk to them and you want to be able to do that, and they're wrapped up in their own lives that
mhm,
they aren't able to support you in those times. That's one
mm.
aspect. But then there's the other aspect of having these boring or daily routines,
Ooh.
and then we're like, or just like we just heard, oh, Jason talking about picking up those Legos and not being able to have those times where there's that imbalance of even who's going to do what in the house. And if
Mhm,
you feel like you're the one always doing everything in the house, everything, then you don't feel supported. And if you're
mhm,
not feeling supported, and that happens on a consistent basis, because we're likely to excuse these rare occasions, we're likely to understand those other times where life happens. It's those times where it's consistently happening repeatedly over and over, year after year after year, that causes us to feel burnt out.
mm.
And then
Wow.
to add to it, when we are at that codependency, we develop these relationship addictions that can lead to outbursts of jealousy, resentment, helplessness, feeling like a burden, and that just causes you to feel emotionally drained.
Mm,
Michelle, I see your hand is up again.
Yeah, I've been flashing it because I didn't get a chance to finish what I was trying to say. But our country just went through a major pandemic, and it changed everybody's world for the better or for worse, whatever. Not for better for anyone, I'm sure. But we all had to deal with some more issues because we were more homebound with our spouses and with our kids. And life has changed. And, the government really made this wacky situation worse when they started to place all these
Well, Michelle,
rules.
we're gonna.
Well,
I
mhm.
yeah, we don't want to avoid talking about politics. I understand that might be important, but in the marriage burnout, we don't want to talk about that one,
Well, a lot of
just
these
because.
marriages are burning out because of the pandemic, because of what happened. They've been cooped up. I know.
But in
I
it,
know. I'd be if I had to be cooped up with my husband 24 hours. I'd be going crazy. Literally, I'm so glad that he went to work during the pandemic because the only thing that saves my marriage, people, is that we don't see each other very too much. I mean, like we see each other at nighttime, and in the morning time we have coffee and chit chat. But I mean, if I had to stay cooped up with my husband and kids, I'd be nuts.
Mm,
and and I understand where you're coming from, but yeah, but we really do want to avoid having any political conversations because it does cause other issues, and we're really here to talk about marriage burnout.
Yeah.
Hope, I see your hand is also up.
Yeah, I was going to just chime in. It's a very interesting conversation. with marital burnout, even though my scenario was a little bit different, but I think towards the end of the marriage, I noticed that we had not been intentional about checking in with each other, how that emotional part of it. And I felt like at the beginning of our marriage, it was more of playing house.
Mm.
So, he had his role and I had my role. And, it was fine as long as we were playing those roles. But when life happened, I noticed that there were cracks in the partnership where we couldn't be there for one another because of I don't know if you call him marital burnout, but just we've been playing these roles. So he's Ken and I'm Barbie, and we're making it all try to make it work. And then all of a sudden life happens, and I'm like, oh my God, this person can't be there for me. Is it because, he's working, these many hours and we so, then I'm trying to towards the end or, somewhere in the middle, really check in with, like, can we have conversations? Can we kind of check in with each other? Can we, see how each other's doing? And life happens, and then those deaths in the family, those sicknesses in the family, those things that, just regular life. And this person cannot handle it. And I'm feeling like emotionally I'm carrying the marriage. And that caused a lot of problems, marital, like, at one point we he had 3 kids, previous marriage, and we had the one child together, 4 kids, they can keep you busy alone. So, and then there was cracks in that, some of the kids needed more help than others. And it was like, we are not doing well on this emotional front. And the house is no longer playing house like it's supposed to. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but then we tried to reestablish and start connecting and talking, and then I found out there's nothing there. He's having a real hard time being emotionally available, and it's real easy to get caught up in that, in the grind of life, until you get the cracks, until you get these hard issues, until you get, life happens and you're finding that, I may have picked the wrong person because I'm feeling like emotionally I'm carrying all the load, right? And it burns you out. It burns you out. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, what you described was that emotional imbalance that led to the marital burnout. You provided a perfect example of one.
That's interesting because and even hearing that when you talk about this last couple of points, you were talking about like the routines and um, the resentment or the helplessness or burdening your partner. What would you say is the role of, because like when we're in these spaces where, say, for instance, you used the example earlier of grief, and it's like both parties are grieving in some instance or some sense, both parties are grieving, so neither party is emotionally available. So is there something in a sense where this is where we can't even expect that our partners would be everything? Because I think sometimes there's the idea that, okay, well, you and I are together, Dr. Tracy, so we're 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 going to be everything to each other. What is the role of friendships and, like you said, the therapists and counselors or whatever, when we recognize that we're in some of those burnout spaces? Because again, a lot of times it looks like the idea is just, well, we should just not be together. But could some of that be coming from expecting that we're supposed to be everything to each other?
And there's that expectation word again. And what you're describing as being everything to each other is that codependency. So how do we overcome how to, those thoughts? That comes in another session. But the reality is though, we can't be everything to anybody. And when we know we need the support, then that's when you do reach out to other people. You reach out to each other first. If you know that person is currently unavailable, then we always need to have a support system. We need to
Mm-hmm.
have somebody else that is that, that couple that gets it, who's there. We don't want to go to our friend that's single and, wants to party. We want to go to somebody who, is who's in their grind as well, who understands what you're going through, who supports your relationship.
Mm. Yeah.
Because there's a difference between having that party chick or party guy versus your marital friend.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to
Yeah.
be like, you're being a little bit unrealistic with this one, and who's going to actually call you out. You don't want somebody who's just going to be that yes person who's always going to agree with you. You want somebody who's going to be like, nah, you're wrong, or you're right.
That's good. I think that's so key. That that piece of someone who actually supports your relationship and supports it. Because we will talk each other out of some stuff. You don't need it, no way.
I didn't like that person, no way.
I didn't like them anyway.
Yes, you want that person who is going to support your marriage,
Mm. Yeah.
and who's willing to call you out on it too.
Wow, folks, I hope this is helpful for you all. Like that you're taking some notes, taking this in. We got about 10 minutes left. So, throw them questions, comments out there. Let's get it.
Before I throw the next set of questions to you all, because I wanted you all to do a marital satisfaction scale.
Woo.
And I'm running my mouth so much that I haven't even gotten there yet.
I'm ready for the scale. Anybody ready?
Well, it's in the chat.
Oh, it's in there already. Okay.
Yes, it's already in there. There are 15, and it's not numbered. Sorry about that. There are 15 statements, and I want you to spend a few minutes, probably like the next 2 or 3 minutes, reviewing them and thinking about your marriage and how true that is. Or your relationship. Let's even that. Your relationship, your long-term relationship. How true is it of you? Oh, and I just saw these. Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't even see any of the chat until just now.
No. I don't see I see what you put in the chat. But I don't see much of. I see a comment that Beth Ann put, but other than that, I don't see anything else.
I see something from Jody.
Oh, I don't see that. Okay. Y'all know sometimes my chat don't work right. No way.
Okay, I'm going to shut up for 2 minutes.
Ooh. Taking shots with the very first question, Dr. Tracey.
Okay, so I gave you some time. How close are you? How many truths are there compared, and how many falses? Jose, you're ready to go. What you got?
Yeah, just going over through the list of statements, I would probably say how many total was there? Like 10, you said?
I said
15.
there's 15.
15. Okay. I'd say when I was going through and kind of checking them off in my head, I'm probably say I'm like 9, 10.
That's good. You sound
Mhm.
like you're pretty satisfied. Now
I
those are the
mean,
ones that you're
I would say yes, yes, satisfied, yes. Um, but I mean, it's just a forever work in progress.
it is. But those other ones that you don't, that aren't where you aren't feeling positive about, those are where you have to work on.
Right.
And that's the part where we need to make sure that we are working on that so we don't have so we can reduce some of the marital burnout. We can strengthen our relationship by increasing those areas that we've already identified are not as strong as the others.
Hmm.
Does anyone else want to share where they're at in their relationship? Kayla.
Okay, I'm just going to be honest. I'm already divorced. So that lets you
That's
know
okay.
all my answers were no. That's why I said that I should have seen this 5 years ago. Maybe that helped. But one of the things that, looking at those questions, they were questions that you really had to sit and think about. But what I find interesting is there was a point where I wanted to really, try to work on it. But, at the end of the day, even if I, was still married and I said, okay, let's work on this. If you don't have the other person that's really sincerely, heartfelt, whole soul, willing to work on those things, because those are some deep-seated things. Like, I mean, one of the things you said earlier was, oh, it just went out my mind. But you can't be sweeping things under the rug. And I know my ex, he didn't like just discussing things, like anything that was deeper than surface level. It was
Hmm.
just the most difficult thing for him. It was like pulling teeth. So I think these questions are great. And I think it's a real good way to check in. Someone else said, I think, every so many years, to check in with these questions to kind of get yourself rerouted on the right path.
We in 2023. It's every so many months we need to ask these questions.
Yeah, that's true
Mm-hmm.
too. That is true.
Mm-hmm. Zar, you actually say that and jokingly, but the
Oh,
reality
I
is
mean it though.
how many times do we go to the doctor a year? How many
Mm,
times do we go to the
if we
dentist
even
a
go.
year?
Hmm. Hmm.
Or how many times is recommended to go to the doctor a year? And how many times is recommended to go to the dentist a year?
Hmm.
That's taking care of your physical health. But you have
Hmm.
to live with this person day in and day in and day out. And you want to live with this person the rest of your life. So how many times should we be checking in on our relationship?
I know I'm personally getting to the point where we're doing check-ins regularly because and because and this is now. I didn't do this in my marriage when I was married, but it's like doing this now to really check in and see where we, on a more frequent basis because things change so much, and I think that we're under more stress as a society. So it's like really having, and we can get lost in the responsibility of being, having to deal with life and having to deal with whatever that we miss out. Because I say all the time, like we oftentimes in our relationships, the responsibility of life often what it causes us to no longer relate to each other. We stop relating because we're busy handling the responsibilities and handling responsibilities. And you're going to work, you're playing your role, I'm doing my thing, I'm playing my role, and we haven't checked in to actually relate with each other, other than when we lay down in the bed to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So It's very key. Like I love these questions, and they really, wow, they're powerful. Like and do make you think. Might make some of us break up too, but it really makes us.
Oh gosh.
It really makes us have to think. But I do think we're under a lot of pressure. So these check-ins should be regular. It sounds like to me.
Hmm. Definitely. And it is not only you have to do the check-in, your partner has to do the check-in as well.
Hmm.
And some of those check-ins have to be internally. What are you missing? What are you needing?
Hmm.
What do you want? What's going well? Because we can't, we live in a
Yeah.
negative society anyways. When are we focusing on the positives?
Yeah.
So those are the questions that you can always copy and paste, put it in your own notes, so you can always look into your relationship and try to figure out where you're at on a regular basis, and how do we figure out a way to improve these areas.
Hmm.
And you can't do it by yourself. There's no way you can do this by yourself.
Yeah.
Marriage is for two people. And you're
Yeah.
not married to yourself. You're married to someone else.
Some of
Now,
this could be great date night conversations.
yeah, they could be. You could take one question a week. You could take one statement a night and have that conversation and ask, do you feel that I understand you? Am I feeling you am I feeling understood?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then having that conversation of what does that look like for you? Because our perspectives are different because we're human.
Yes. Yes.
So we can't expect somebody else to think like we think. We have to come into our relationship having these open conversations if you want to stay married. And I can't guarantee one way or the other where you're at, because it's your life to live and it's your marriage.
Yeah.
And you can continue on, have that. But if it becomes one of those conflictual conversations, there's an issue.
Yeah. Ooh.
None of these 15 should cause an issue. With that being said, we only have less than a minute left, and I know, Zara, you've got some things to do. So I'm going to turn it over to you, or anybody else asking any questions.
Yeah. Well, folks, let's give Dr. Tracy some love for this, because I think this is, like Kayla said, some of us could have used this 5 years ago, but I think that we can still use it today and moving forward with our life. When I was sort of posting some of the posts for this, I said, this kind of information can help us save some of our relationships and help us save our soul to some degree if we actually really practice these things. But also really incorporate this in our relationships. A lot of times we expect our relationships to run on automatic just because we love each other. But these are skills that we have to bring in that will actually help us to have thriving relationships and thriving marriages and thriving whatever it is that we're doing these days. With mergers, that's the word I'm thinking, merging lives. So thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you. I hope this was helpful for you all. Please, 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 please. We're trying to get reviews on these things. So if you get a chance when we check out of here, leave a review and let us know what you think of these master classes. We want to make sure that we're continuing and giving you all things that are helpful for you all as you navigate your journeys and lives and relationships and everything else that you're going through. So this session will continue. Dr. Tracy, how many more weeks we got of this?
I don't know. I would
I
say
don't know.
3.
At least
I would
3.
say 3, but possibly 4.
Yeah. All right. So y'all, it's not over yet. Keep your notebooks hot. Keep your pens ready. All right. And I will see all of you all same bat time, same bat channel next week. All right. Thank you, Dr. Tracy. We really appreciate you so
Thank you.
much. All right.
Thank you.
Everybody
See you
have a good
soon.
one. Peace.